I'd like to call the Board of Public Works meeting of September 29th to order and ask if anybody else is recording except for LCAT.
Shirley Tancredi for the minutes.
All right. And we'll move right into looking for a approval of the minutes of 9:15.
So moved.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Good to go. Review the minutes of the executive session.
Make a motion to accept.
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we're good to go. And we'll move right into Bob's superintendent report.
Thank you. First, I'd like to remind the board that the special town meeting is scheduled for October 19th at 7 p.m. The Board of Public Works will have 4 articles on the agenda altogether. The first 3 articles are articles number 8, number 9, and number 10. And all 3 of those pertain to personnel service budget adjustments for the water, sewer, and then combined highway and building divisions. Article 20 pertains to the Fenway Lane street acceptance. And we discussed all these articles in more detail at the last meeting.
Do you want me to take 8, 9, and 10 and somebody wants 20, or do we want to alternate? Or
I don't care.
8, 9, 10's all
8, 9, 10 should
negotiation
be the
stuff.
same. Well,
So I'll take 8, 9, 10 if you want.
I'll do 20 if you want.
And Tom's got 20, and
I'll take a nap.
you can be a cheerleader. All right, we're good to go. So we'll do it that way.
Okay.
Are they going to do a pre-taping? say
They
anything about it,
have
or?
not announced it, so I suspect
Right.
not.
Right. So if they do, let me know. And
Okay.
if I'm around, I'll do it. If not, I'll send Tom or Dan.
Oh, yeah. The next item I wanted to advise the board of is, as you might recall, we decided this year to team up with the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District and 11 other communities in a joint procurement for road salt for this winter. The bids were received yesterday by Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District, and there was only one bid submitted, but the bid came in about $2 lower than our bid last year and lower than the Mass DOT's bid.
Only one bid.
Yeah, last year we only received 2 bids.
Really? We used to do it, we used to get 3 or 4.
Right, so is this coming out of Boston or New York?
This is actually coming out of Providence.
Providence.
It's a company we have not dealt with before. Hampden-Wilbraham has done a pretty good amount of due diligence. It's a company named Mid-American Salt. They stockpile, they actually ship and have been stockpiling for the last 13 months from their mine in Morocco. And they have been supplying communities and others in the Midwest via the Mississippi River barge shipping canal for the past 4 or 5 years now, and they're now moving into the East Coast and again have set up a stockpile in Providence. They were the salt provider that bailed out the state of Rhode Island last winter when the firm that they had contracted with could not fulfill their orders that the state of Rhode Island had put in. So Mid-American sort of proved themselves last year in terms of being able to provide salt when others weren't able to provide it, even though others had it under contract. What we've learned also is that they do contract with local trucking companies like Goulet and others for their trucking, so they're working with established firms, and they dispatch directly out of their office, so they're under direct control of the orders coming in and when we need the salt. In fact, we already received today a questionnaire from Mid-American in terms of wanting to know how big is our salt shed, what is the current status of the salt shed, you know, what's our annual usage, things like that. So they're trying to, seems like they're trying to do their homework and
Right.
pre-prepare for what this winter might require.
So is that, they use Goulet?
They use Goulet as one of the firms that they work with, yes.
But he's out of what, Hatfield or something? Or
Yeah, I'm not certain. I know I've seen their
Deerfield,
trucks
that
around.
way. He's
Yeah,
on this side of the state.
right.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting. Apparently, their shipping, they ship grain and salt back and forth. And grain leaves the U.S. and salt comes back into the U.S. in their ships.
get some salty grain.
A grainy salt.
Next item I have is Green Mountain Pipeline. They're the firm doing the manhole sealing, pipeline lining, things like that for us. They are scheduled, and this, I suspect, is subject to change depending on weather conditions over the next day or two, but they're currently scheduled to be lining, it's a 10-inch clay line about 330 feet from about Rockies on North Main Street to just below 61 North Main Street. That segment that we found some significant defects in last year when we were doing TV inspection work.
Sanitary?
Sanitary line, correct. They have already reached out to the businesses that are impacted again. I expect that, particularly if we see high flows, they may end up having to back off until flows drop off, but we'll see.
Right.
Yeah, this rain.
Right. I did want to note, and it's kind of ironic with this rain coming, that we have continued to see very high water usage. As a comparison, we're using about, or our users have been consuming about 20% more water this September than they did last September through the same time period. And year to date, we are 11% as of the end of August, 11% higher than last year.
Consumption.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go even higher.
We will most likely go higher. I expect once these rains hit, this will probably be the end of the irrigation system, but the season has kept going. We had probably a peak weekend over the Labor Day weekend where we were running, full capacity and keeping up, but just keeping up with demand. As high as we saw during the dry period that we saw in May, we were seeing that again over the Labor Day weekend.
Wow.
So, I expect from a revenue standpoint, that's a good thing, and it does appear that our water billing has been correlating or has been tracking along with that, because I know our billing clerk has remarked to me multiple times that she's seen some very high bills coming in from some customers that we would expect would be very heavily irrigating over the summer. So the trend seems to be tracking together, that not only are we purchasing the water from Springfield at a greater rate than we did last year, we're then reselling it to our customers at a higher rate than last year.
And the Tennessee pipeline deal was not really a lot of water. It was, but I think.
Yeah, over a year, not a real big,
Right.
Over the short amount of time, it seemed big, but it really wasn't. One item I wanted to note, that the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission has reached out to us and all the other communities that they work with, and they are looking to, I want to say standardized metering. They're looking to eliminate the redundant data processing and meter reading process that's currently underway. So what we currently do is we read our meter every day, we report, we tabulate that data, we put together a written report that gets mailed into Springfield Water and Sewer Commission every month. They have the goal of looking to automate all of that, so they're actually looking to tie in to our meter with a parallel output device that would connect wirelessly to their network. So at the same time that we're pulling information off our meter into our SCADA system, they are pulling that data directly off to their billing system, so that we're using the same data, we're collecting it at the same time, and that we streamline the data collection process, because every community was doing a different thing with them, and they're really trying to standardize and have all that data coming in directly to them via a wireless network that they have. Second Springfield Water and Sewer item, we still have not heard any word about our sewer contract extension since June 1st. Our contract was technically up at the end of June. I expect that Springfield Water and Sewer is still working on coming up with an equitable way to assess capital costs. We had talked previously that there are some significant capital costs that they expect to incur in the next 4 or 5 years on different pieces of their system, and different communities will benefit in different ways from those improvements, and different communities had different perspectives in terms of how those costs should be apportioned and how those should be shared. So I think they went back to the drawing board with the goal of coming up with something that they can present to the communities that the communities would accept. But we have not heard any information other than they're still working on it since June 1st. Did want to note that myself and Dan Murphy, the town engineer, participated today in the first planning meeting for the Heritage Park Recreational Planning Project. That's the one that's being done by Berkshire Design out of Northampton. We and Colin Drury of the Recreation Department are essentially co-chairing that effort. The school department was there today, the town administrator was there, the Rec Commission was there. Really just looking to kick off, talk about roles, talk about what the objectives might be of trying to plan for higher use, I would say, of Heritage Park. You know, we own the property already. Is there something that makes sense to do to expand it beyond what we currently have there? The first phase of it is really looking at the existing conditions, and that's what Berkshire Design is doing right now. They're looking at existing slopes, they're looking at existing wetlands, soils, things like that. And then once they do that, they'll be coming back to us with essentially the areas that they think that have some potential for future improvements, and then working through a number of different concepts for how those improvements might be made.
Are we, are they looking at Hamden Road at all as a concurrent study, depending on costs or use, that they find at Heritage? Because we've got Mountain View,
Right.
Hamden Road, I guess is what I'm saying.
The Browns piece?
Yeah.
It's an interesting point because we actually discussed that at length today. That's not currently part of their scope, but the group did feel that addressing the town's recreational needs really needs to be done holistically. That, you know, obviously there's no way, Heritage Park is not large enough, it doesn't necessarily have all the opportunities, it has some drawbacks that would not allow it to meet all the town's needs. So to meet all those needs, it may take a combination of looking at Heritage, looking at the Brown property, maybe looking beyond that if the needs can't be met beyond that. So that was talked about. Right now, they're tasked with looking at what can you do at Heritage, and not necessarily we do the most we can, because the most we can may not make sense. It might be decided that Heritage is part of the solution, but something else is a bigger part of the solution. So therefore, you know, you make your investments appropriately around different facilities or different locations in town. So short answer is, it's not part of their current scope, but the group that was together today between the school department, town administrator, Recreation Commission, all voiced the same opinions that this really needs to be looked at holistically and not just at the park itself.
Yeah, I mean, just, I don't know either one of them really intimately, but I mean, Heritage is full of trees and ponds and brooks. And the Brown property is pretty flat, untreed, and has potential pretty quick, I would think, but.
I would say that the front part of the property, that is true, but as you get to the rear, it has more actual challenges than the Heritage does.
Yeah.
Heritage, the biggest issue is slopes. It's, you know, anywhere from 5 to 10% slope going up the hillside, so development becomes expensive as you might be looking at terrace or tier development going up the hill. The Brown property has major wetland issues, from a positive standpoint, environmental limitations, but it is very wet in many areas. It is not necessarily as accessible. So it's not, neither one of them are perfect solutions, I think, at this point, but they probably both have a role.
Have we done anything else looking at the actual structure that's up there?
Yeah, we did, was it last spring, we actually went and looked up there, the front part of that building. The old stables need to be torn down, they're in pretty poor shape, but the old metal riding arena looks like it could use some TLC, but probably could fix it up and get that working.
Yeah,
If
it
they're
needs a new
budget.
roof, but beyond
Yeah.
the new metal roof,
Right.
all the timbers are sound, all
Mm-hmm.
the structure, the bones of the structure itself are found, you know, for a riding arena. It wouldn't ever be a four-season type
Right.
of structure, but
Right.
for a three-season structure.
Yep.
My understanding is that there is a bit of a reformed Brown Farm Committee. I'm not quite certain what the makeup of that committee is. I know that we're not directly involved in that are trying to look at some of these issues. That I believe has been initiated by the Board of Selectmen at this point.
Okay.
We mentioned previously the Appalachian Pipeline project. The discharge, the emptying of that pipeline is complete at this point, with the exception of they are going to re-pig the line one more time. What they essentially do is they run the lay term for it is a pig, but a compressible bullet basically through the pipeline, and what that does is they push it with air through the pipeline, and they want to run it through one more time, make certain that if there's any low points that might be trapping any water or anything like that, that those are pushed out of the pipeline. they're expecting the volume that might be, might result from that would be the volume of one of their frac tanks, a relatively small volume of water that would come out. To date, they've discharged about 560,000 gallons of treated wastewater out of the pipeline. They did have to obtain a pre-treatment discharge permit from the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. They sampled during the discharge. They ran all their water through not only physical filtration equipment, but also a granular activated carbon adsorption process as well to remove any petroleum products or anything like that that might be present. So it was highly treated before it's discharged to our sewer system. Moving on, road projects. The good news is our road projects are complete from a paving standpoint. The side streets are done, the aprons are done. The one significant item that's left to be done is the line striping. The subcontractor working for Lane Construction did get out on site last week and began the striping process. They did the stop bars, they did the crosswalks, but then they unfortunately got rescheduled, and this week obviously isn't going to be a very good week for doing line striping. It's looking like it's going to be wet probably through the weekend into early next week from what the predictions are. So, I expect it could be another week before they're back out here to finish up the line striping. We are putting together a punch list right now and making certain that everything's taken care of. Any cleanup issues are taken care of before, before Lane Construction is completely done on this project. We did, as you might recall, we did defer the last piece of Chestnut from Holly Drive to Benton because we wanted to make certain that we had seen all the settlement we're going to see. So that will be done next spring as one of the first roads that are done. And the other road that is not part of the paving project, but as part of our water main project, is to pave the Millbrook Circle, Hunting, and Millbrook to the extent of the water main replacement. And we're working on identifying the limits of the paving and how much shimming we need to do and things like that right now, so that Lane could be working on that over the next month. We would expect to get it done this fall, and then completely button up that job, because it's been in, the main's been in service for most of this year, and we are waiting, particularly since a small portion of that road was opened up this spring. We wanted to again make certain it was well compacted and settled before we did any paving. Moving on, we are looking to identify a fall crack sealing project. Again, sort of the strategy we've talked about before is roads that are probably in moderate condition, or in a couple of cases in relatively good condition, but have some cracking that we want to address to keep them in good condition. We're looking at something in the range of about 15,000 to maybe 20,000 lineal feet of roadway to do on top of the work that's been done to date. Right now, what we've identified is looking to finish up North Main Street from where we finished off last year, which was roughly Lombard in that location north of Stop and Shop, and take that to the Springfield line. And then there's a section of North Main Street from the Four Corners, from Westwood, Maple Shade, back down into the center. From that point up to Stop and Shop, the pavement in our minds that's probably a candidate for road repaving work in the nearer term, so that we're holding off doing crack sealing there, because it's essentially a case where we feel it's in not good enough shape to make the investment in terms of crack sealing to retain the condition of it. So that's where we expect to go. That's about 5,400 lineal feet. We're looking at Pleasant Street right now from Heatherstone down to Porter, coming down the hill in relatively good shape, but there are some cracks there, and if we can keep the cracks sealed and keep the water out of the sub-base, we're going to extend the life of that road. We're looking at Porter Street from Parker to Allen, again the portion of Porter that's in pretty good shape, but we want to keep it in relatively good shape so we don't have to look at a more significant project. We're looking at, there's a little piece of Westwood from where we finished the reclaim work up to Four Corners as you drop down by Forest Air, that we want to crack seal that section. Solid pavement, but it would benefit from some crack sealing to extend its life. And then we're looking at Chestnut. Combination Chestnut, as you might recall, portions of it were paved now, probably going back 4 or 5 years ago. One portion of it was overlaid last year, and we really want to take a look probably at the entire street, and there are some areas even where we paved last year where we had some significant frost heaving that we want to get in and get those cracks sealed to make certain that we can retain the investment that we made. So That will probably be as far as we go this year. You know, we've looked at Maple Shade conceivably from the Four Corners to Elm Street as a street that's in okay shape. It's going to need some work in the not too distant future, but crack sealing may buy us some additional time there. We probably won't get there this year. And we also took a look at Shaker from the Rotary down to Chestnut. As you get from Chestnut down to the south, I think there's too many patches and other things that don't really make crack sealing worth the investment, but it's not, it's you know, it's in moderate condition from the Rotary to Chestnut beginning. I don't think we're going to get that far this fall. They'd likely be then moving, you know, towards a spring list of crack sealing depending on what happens this winter. Another item that both staff of the office and in the field have been working on lately is the landfill and compost area improvements. We are in the process now of building the second half of the compost pad, so when we're done we have a 200-foot by 300-foot area for processing of material as well as storage of material. By permit, what we have to do is we have to put down a minimum of 12 inches of gravel, but actually we need to first put down a warning layer, basically orange construction fence, as a visible barrier between the top of the landfill and the pad that we're building on top of that. You know, in case someone is out there and they start digging or whatever, it's real obvious evidence that you're in a location that you shouldn't be digging, or the rut, you know, wheel rut gets caught or something, you start turning up the fence. So it's then 12 inches of gravel and then a hardened surface on top of that. And that hardened surface can be either hard packed gravel or road millings. And we have both available to us now as a result of the reclaim work that we did. So it'll be one or the other. So we've been working on that. Tomorrow, Seaboard Drilling is working on installing an additional monitoring well that's required by the state. Between the historical landfill area and the Brownstone Gardens area, there was one location that the state wanted to make certain that the town monitored over the years. And you may or may not recall that ultimately when the state earlier this year approved the plan that was drafted going back almost 10 years ago now, their approval now puts in place the requirement to complete annual sampling and monitoring of the landfill for environmental impacts. So that's an item that's not the responsibility of the Board of Public Works, but it's something that Public Works staff have been involved in, and I would expect to be involved going forward, but would be funded through the Board of Health, since it's a legacy issue relative to the operation of the landfill as opposed to the ongoing operation of the compost facility. But Seaboard will be out there tomorrow. This well has to be installed into bedrock between the landfill area and Brownstone, and then ultimately all the wells on the site have to be sampled by the middle of December. So we'll be starting the first round of environmental sampling this year and then having to continue it on an annual basis thereafter. And then moving on, we do expect as part of the landfill closure to begin site clearing in the next week or two. The site clearing consists of strictly cutting the trees and cutting the stumps flush with grade. We aren't required to stump or anything else, because the concern is we don't want to disturb the existing material that's there. So the state is allowing us to just cut everything flush and leave it there. It may mean that over time, as the stumps settle a little bit, you know, we may need to come and do some regrading and filling in, but it's a lot less effort and time and disturbance to just cut everything and leave it as it is. And then the last item on the landfill issues is just to note that from a management standpoint, beginning the middle of October, any new material that we bring into the landfill is supposed to be placed on either the compost pad that we're building or other surfaces that we build above the landfill surface. We're not required to move material that's currently there. In the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be required to move all that material off and ultimately have it on protected areas as well, but it's really going forward that if we're bringing gravel in, if we're bringing manhole frames and covers in, they're going to have to be located in an area where the existing landfill cap is protected from any potential damage by those activities. And the last item I had was, even though as we wrap up calendar year 15 road work, we're starting to take a look at where we might go in calendar year 16. And what we want to do this fall is get out to some locations start taking a look at pavement thicknesses, doing some coring, doing some testing of the gravel materials in a couple of roads that we've identified as tentatively part of a program for next year. And those would include Allen Street, most likely from Parker Street to the Hampden line, Porter Road from Parker to the Wilbraham line, heading east. North Main Street, I mentioned a little bit earlier that there's a section between Dearborn and Stop and Shop that is in pretty tough shape and probably is an area that we'll have to work on sooner than later. That's, I don't expect that that's the totality of next year, but Dearborn
to
north to Stop and Shop, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a
It's,
dip right there.
yeah, it's kind of a dip. There's a lot of road cuts in that location. It's pretty rough that, again, no real thoughts of what we do, how we do it, or anything like that, but just start, while we have the opportunity in good weather, get out there, start doing some investigative work that might help us better plan come springtime. And that is it for my presentation.
Thank you very much. Bruce, you're gonna give us an operations building / manager report?
Sure.
Nice.
Just want to give the boards a heads up that we did receive a replacement car for my vehicle from the police department yesterday. It's a 2008 Crown Victoria. It was used by them for the past few years. It's replacing our 2001 Crown Vic that I currently drive. Have obviously many issues with, so do have to do a little bit of work on it, so it's going to be in the garage. Guys are going to pick away at it, hopefully within the next month or so, get that on the road, and hopefully last us a few years anyways.
Moving on up.
Yeah.
Is it unmarked? So
Yes,
we don't
yes,
have to paint
unmarked, we
so
don't have to paint it, it's
Yeah.
a dark blue color, so windows are nice and tinted, so yeah, be in good shape.
Styling.
Yeah. So anyways, it's a little bit of good news anyways, get through the winter and the next few years anyways. Also,
Do we logo that with DPW logos as opposed
Yes, we
to
will.
somebody thinking it's a cop?
absolutely.
Probably more for your security
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah, and we take out the blue lights and I believe the white lights that their required police departments are currently using, so they don't get confused.
Yeah.
We still want the,
I'm just thinking DPW logo as
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah,
to.
you
Yeah.
can put yellow lights on it,
Yeah.
replace the lenses with yellow.
exactly, just for safety on the side of the
Yeah.
roads and everything else. No
Awesome.
wig wags or any of that stuff, but yeah, some flashers.
Nice.
Yep. Brief update on the sidewalk job. We completed about another 60, 70 feet of sidewalk. Kind of slowed down a little bit. We've come into an area where the grade has changed considerably. Had to take out a bunch of material and put in about 20 by 6-inch granite curbing in front of this one property. So we've had to hog out some material, put in some drainage pipe. We have some granite that was delivered on site. The block retaining wall, we currently have ordered from Cook's today. Should be on site next week. It's about 90 feet by 30 inches tall. So we've gotten past that, but we're gonna, once the material's all in, kind of circle back around, get that in and get the sidewalk poured and hopefully move on and weather permitting, get this done in the next month or so.
Complete the whole job?
Hopefully, yes. Keep my fingers crossed, barring any other tasks that may be put in front of us. Highway Division, this past, actually last week, we did some kind of ADA upgrades that was requested by the high school. There's a handicap student and a kind of a handicap advocate for that student, pointed out some walkways that access through the pool area and out to Maple Street. So we had Steve Savini and the highway crew go out, take out and cut out some curbing in probably about 6 locations and kind of feather things down so there's a nice access ramp for that student to get out to Maple Street. So they're pretty happy with that work. We've actually done that, and we actually kind of changed gears as far as catch basins. We're going to get back to catch basins next week, but went out, received quite a few phone calls on potholes, and have completed a lot of those this past week. So like I said, was turn back around, get back out to catch basins. But we're making good headway on the work order system, potholes and catch basins, and get all prepared for winter. Parks Department consistently is doing well. Marking fields, mowing grass, doing an outstanding job. I've actually had Mr. Anderson also overseeing some tree removal work orders with our boom lift that we have, and put a pretty big dent in some of those work orders. We do have a few left with little bit questionable as far as power lines and accessibility with our lift to get those down safely. So we're going to be regrouping on those, but did some good work over the last couple of weeks.
Good.
Moving on to the building report. Last week we finished installing that harmonic mitigation transformer down in Boiler Room 1. We fired it up, everything's working well, but we're not going to really see any significant, I guess, results until we actually fire up the boilers down there. The boilers last year, because of that noise that we're getting over the neutral, were going out on flame failure. So once we fire up the boilers, hopefully we'll see some significant changes in that system over there. So wait to see. Hopefully we won't be turning on the heat anytime soon. So we'll see what happens. We've also, on Monday, we locked in our natural gas contract with Direct Energy. We've actually extended our existing contract by 2 years. A little bit of bad news, we went from $6.07 per decatherm up to about $8.12 per decatherm. So we're up about 20% on that. Me and Bob have been looking for the last couple of months to see what we could do, and it seems that that's going to make the most sense for the town. On another note, on some of our on-bill repaying projects through some of the conservation items we've done over the past few years will be coming off our electric bills in the next few months, probably roughly about $30,000 worth of projects. So some of those are going to help offset some of those extra expenses we've been seeing for the natural gas in the next 2 years. So
Is this at a spike of renewal? Should we go month to month and then renegotiate in the spring? Because going into the winter, the rates go up, right? So are we locking in at a high rate for 2 years based on the time we're locking in?
The numbers that we've been seeing have been pretty constant over the past 4, 5, 6 months, because we've been talking with Paul Schroeder out of Lower Pioneer Valley for months, and he's been the gentleman that Bruce has worked with for years.
So they haven't spiked unnecessarily
No.
this fall yet?
no,
Yeah.
no.
It's the big thing with the gas market is the uncertainty regarding transmission capacity. And last winter wasn't as bad as people thought it was going to be. This winter may not be as bad as people think it could be, but it's hard to see.
We're
The
hoping
thought
to
is
get over
3
the hump,
years
so-
out.
But you locked for 2?
For 2. Yeah, it
Back
was
for one?
That's what I'm wondering.
the.
I mean, the pipeline won't be until 18, so
One was $8.35.
it's not gonna go down.
2
until-
was $8.12, and the 3-year was $7.85. So that was the lowest that we got.
Yeah, 'cause it's
It's-
gonna go down.
And it's a question of,
Yeah.
when the
All right.
companies can anticipate that the solution is really
In place.
in place, or at least going to be in place. And right now, given some of the pushback they're getting,
Is that where you live?
no, actually, my hometown, we have a moratorium on new gas connections right now.
Yeah, because of it.
Yeah,
right?
because of it, yeah.
So you're not that far up.
We're hoping, like you said, all the projections say in the next couple of years, once we get over this hump, the supply is going to increase, and hopefully things are going to drop back down. So we were fighting with the idea of going 3, or, I mean, we're going to lock ourselves in at a 3-year rate because it's lower, and then have it be after the 2-year mark, go down to 50 cents. You just don't know.
It's, the good news, we believe, is that we've been doing enough things to mitigate the impact. We have known our electricity prices going up now from 7 cents to 9 cents roughly.
Yep.
Still a very good rate, but a significant increase in that rate, obviously, because we had a great rate for many years.
Right.
Well, you got your choices, I mean, you got 835, 812, and
$7.85.
785.
They're leaving in 2 years.
We looked at the impact, and the impact is about $50,000 per year. The point that Bruce was making, right now we have about $3,000 per month in on-the-bill payments that we're making relative to previous energy efficiency improvements. Those come off the bill, for instance, in 3 to 4 months. So 3 to 4 months, we'll be picking up about $36,000 annually to offset the gas increase. We're also going to be looking, keeping our fingers crossed, $100,000 plus in, solar net renewable credits that'll be applied. So we're cautiously optimistic that we'll hit budget through a couple of things that we're doing to reduce costs, even though our
No, our.
Utility costs are increasing.
1, 2, or
Yeah,
3.
just
I mean,
1, 2, or 3.
We're all gonna
Yeah.
do that anyways, and we're gonna get those savings anyways, but,
Uh-huh.
does it make sense to go 1 year pay the living higher, and next year be able to see what happens if our price going down again?
2's probably a safe harbor.
Yeah, that's why they took it.
Yeah, so I think we're good.
We looked at a couple of things, we worked pretty hard. We proposed to the gas companies, for instance, that we could peak shave, and, we'd be willing to say, we'll drop off the natural gas grid on X number of days' notice, hours' notice, whatever it happens to be during peak gas delivery times, because the electric utilities do this all the time in terms of peak shaving. You can buy lower rates by doing that. They basically said, yeah, we'll give you a lower rate if you don't use any gas from December to March or December to
Yeah.
February. And, we said there wasn't a lot to be gained by that.
And we did prepare all the boilers and everything else, all our oil facilities, our
That's what I
fuel
was gonna say, gas
facilities.
versus oil, we have that.
To do
right?
this and
Right.
prepare for it
Right.
if it made sense.
But they still weren't gonna give us much.
Yeah, and oil's still 10 to 20%. When you look at the
Right.
cost per BTU, it's still more expensive than the cost per gas. So it's still,
Yeah.
gas is still the right place to be.
All right,
Next item I have for the board, town hall distribution panel upgrades, completed the plans and specs last week. I have called the 3-4 contractors to come in, give me some prices for those retrofit panel upgrades at the town hall. October 14th, those quotes will be due at 10 a.m. and hopefully get that town hall renovation project off and running. That's all I have.
I just probably adding to that is just to remind you that we're looking at doing the electrical work first. That'll be happening over the next couple of months. Bathrooms at some point.
Yep.
And then wintertime is really when we're focusing on the internal office
Yep.
improvements and things like that. So
Partition
they will
walls.
be happening.
Yep, yep, this
Ongoing this
upcoming
winter.
winter, yep.
is everybody in agreement to the modifications being made?
At our last meeting, yes, so we're gonna get with them in the next
Yeah.
few weeks, have a
Right.
meeting and make sure nobody's opinions have
Are we
changed.
gonna do like a official sign-off kind of thing? It might make sense to
Yeah.
get each
Right.
department head to go, yep, this is what we want, yep, this is what we
Sure.
want.
Yeah.
Just so that after the fact, well, that's not what we
Right.
wanted. right?
Absolutely,
Yeah, that would make sense.
Just to keep it all just as clean as
Yep.
possible.
yep.
Cool. All right, is there any other business? Any other business, any update on the lights? Electric company lights?
Oh, for the
Oh,
traffic.
yes, actually, good point.
Streetlights.
I did finally get a spreadsheet with all the streetlight locations in town, streetlight locations, pole numbers, KW ratings, et cetera, for each one of what I'm pushing them for is to either get us what's known as the shapefile, which is the GIS file that puts a dot on a map where each one of those are, or give us latitude, longitude information, give us something so that, right now I have a list of streetlights in North Main Street, and there's 200 streetlights from one end of North Main Street to the other. It would be much more helpful to be able to put a dot on a piece of paper and say, okay, this is light number 1, 2, 3, and 4, so we can send somebody out and have them look and start cataloging what is working, what isn't working. So they originally said they couldn't do it, we pushed back, they're now saying they think they can do it.
There's 200 on North Main?
I just picked a number out. There's 1,100 and change townwide.
That makes sense. I didn't think there was 200 on North Main.
Yes.
Times how much on light?
It's about 100,000 a year roughly, isn't it, for the...
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, for streetlights. That's what we pay for electricity. That's just, yeah.
And I have gone to the point that if we can't get that database, I don't want to go this route, but, you know, if I had to put somebody with a GPS device out there going pole by pole to build our own map, but that map exists somewhere.
Yeah.
We just need to get access to it.
Yeah, it does.
Invent the wheel again.
All right. Awesome. What's the
There you go.
13th look like?
13? I won't be here.
Yeah. I can do Wednesday,
You can't do
14th.
What's the 20th look like?
20th's good.
20th is good.
Got anything hot or pressing that you think we would be in trouble? I mean, we can always do an emergency meeting.
I don't think so.
Town meeting is what day? 19th.
19th.
We're all cleared for that, right? We've taken all the votes we wanted to
Right.
take. So now that brings in the next question. Do you want to do it in the cafeteria or here before the town meeting? Want to move it back to Monday night?
I can do it.
What do you think?
Go to the 19th.
Go to the 19th, 5 o'clock, get done and get downtown. You know, go to high school, then it's one night, it's not Monday and Tuesday night.
What do you think?
That work for you?
That works.
Works for everybody? Yes.
So you're gonna do.
So we're gonna post it here at 5 o'clock, and we'll just make sure we're out of here by 6:45.
Yep.
If we have to suspend or table anything, we'll just,
And that's the 19th of
the
October.
19th of October, and that way it'll be same night. Any further business?
No.
Entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second over there somewhere?
Second? I'm sorry.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.